I know you've had an insane season and you've done an amazing job, but I don't need you to worry about much else other than just trying to keep those plants running.
Okay.
Thanks, Tyson.
See ya.
Parker Schnabel built his reputation as the young genius who could outwork, outmine, and outlast almost anyone in the Yukon. But in recent years, cracks have begun to appear beneath that image. Critics have accused him of becoming the very kind of mining boss he once fought against. While growing tensions, risky decisions, and a bitter clash with Tony Beets have raised serious questions about where Parker's career is heading next. So, what really happened behind the scenes?
It worked out to, I think in the bedrock test, it was about an ounce per 200 yards.
I'm really not happy with that. Either you guys take it all and leave none behind.
And why do some people believe Parker Schnabel is entering the most controversial chapter of his life? Join us as we uncover the secret controversies that have plagued Parker Schnabel. In search of gold beneath the trees, Parker Schnabel's nickname, the Young Master, is no joke. It is a title given to him by his fellow miners and colleagues. It highlights his technical mastery of heavy machinery and mining logistics despite his age. The Kid Who Became King is another nickname he has, which was given to him by those who watched his ascent from apprentice to leader. From just working and learning under his legendary grandfather to running his own multi-million-dollar empire. Just like Peter, his grandfather was a legendary gold miner who appeared on Discovery Channel's reality series Gold Rush. Canada's Yukon territory is the geographic heart of Parker Schnabel and his grandfather's massive gold mining empire. Unlike his father, who preferred handling business in office cubicles, at age 18, he skipped college, took his trust fund, and moved to this rugged northwestern region to kickstart his transition from a small-scale Alaskan miner into the powerhouse he is now. Another nickname given to him is the one popularized by fans and the media. This group called him the Gold Rush Prodigy. This name emphasized their love for his journey and their presence throughout his glorious transition. It also reflected their loyalty to him and his empire. And this was where the problem lay. Even though he knew about this loyalty, he didn't necessarily take steps to keep it from breaking into pieces. As his growth continued, he struck a few nerves when the scale of his sluicing increased. His scale of operations kept on rising, and these minor grievances grew into a full-on battle between Parker and the public. He and the Discovery Channel would have loved to stop it in its early stages, but it instead grew into a complex Cold War of bureaucracy, bitter public relations, and tightening modern regulations. At the height of his fame, Parker became the face of modern multi-million-dollar placer gold mining on international television. And as a result, he involuntarily served as a shield for other smaller-scale individuals or organizations against scrutiny on environmental issues. The public's biggest criticism of Parker's operation is of his mining process. This hated process involves stripping away ancient boreal forests, tearing up topsoil, and leaving behind massive, barren moonscapes of gray gravel. For someone who loved keeping most of his business kept private, it was not a doubt that he would have loved this kept under wraps or wrapped up quickly by his legal team. But it escalated to a point where he had to address the elephant himself. The fight and backlash now turned his the Gold Rush Prodigy into a more negative nickname of the Land Destroyer. The damages caused Parker to heavily publicize his aggressive land reclamation efforts. He claimed in a statement interview that his crew contours the tailing piles as soon as a mining cut is finished. They would pump the organic layer of stripped-away topsoil and mud back over the gravel as an act of restoration any time they conducted operations. He aggressively pushes back against environmental critics by claiming that his engineered ponds and new vegetation leave behind a richer, more diverse wildlife habitat than the dense, choked wilderness that existed before he mined. In another era, maybe his interview might have done enough good, but at the moment, it seemed like the advocacy groups had closed ears. They tried finding loopholes in everything he said, and instead focused their criticism on the Gold Rush show and the Discovery Channel for turning environmental degradation into high-octane family entertainment. They point out that the show frames the native soil, trees, and ecosystems resting above the gold as an enemy to be conquered, celebrating whenever a massive bulldozer knocks down acres of trees, and therefore creating a breeding ground for more people who idolize or are like Parker to come up. Parker fought to clear his name as a land destroyer, but his quest for redemption would lead him out of the Yukon and into a physical hell. A tour of retribution. Attempting to clear the air around the series, Discovery Channel launched a spin-off. When it was initially announced, these anti-Parker forums originally thought it was just a new series meant to distract them from cracking down on the star's operations. But they were wrong. Yes, Gold Rush. Parker's trail successfully distracted them from their mission. But in the end, it was created mainly to shift the narrative around the star's life generally, even outside of the environmentalist's lens. The plan was to move him from being seen as a stubborn, short-tempered, privileged boss's kid to a highly respected, empathetic, and forward-thinking master of the mining industry. In the early seasons of the main show, critics and fans often viewed the young master as an intense, overly demanding, bossy character who inherited his opportunities. The spin-off deliberately placed Parker outside his comfort zone, reframing how viewers and industry peers perceived him through several key narrative shifts. Season 1 of Parker's Trail was aimed at shattering the narrative that he was an unworthy, privileged LARPer. By forcing him to physically hike brutal trails on foot with minimal gear, the show proved his deep, genuine reverence for mining history and demonstrated his immense personal grit. On Gold Rush, he is just usually trapped in high-stress production environments, making him look perpetually stressed and unyielding. But on Parker's Trail, he is showcased as a lighter, more vulnerable, and funnier leader. Traveling through places like Papua New Guinea, Guyana, and South America, with a small crew that included friends like Rick Ness and Australian gold expert Tyler Mahoney, also allowed audiences to see him build collaborative friendships rather than just managing employees. Against environmentalists, he exposed the public to the true horrors of unregulated, illegal gold mining. It was also a way to show them that what he was receiving backlash for was simply just baby talk in the face of what the real deal was, and that, despite both his ethical processes and these unethical ones, mining as a whole was not bad. Meanwhile, the new series began gaining traction as the episodes passed by. It became so big that, rather than on the main series, whenever Discovery wanted to address illegal mining, it was almost exclusively done through the spin-off documentary series. Rather than running these operations like before, Parker Schnabel and his film crew would travel to international mining hotspots to observe how locals prospect for gold under heavily unstable, dangerous, or unpermitted conditions. Throughout its run, a few episodes were especially memorable. The stage for beautiful cinema lives in hell. In one of these episodes, the young master tracked down multi-billion-dollar gold operations hidden deep within the Amazon rainforest. The crew traveled down the Madeira River and into Serra Pelada, the infamous site of Brazil's massive 1990s gold rush. They analyzed illegal suction dredges and floating gold cities, and they faced immediate threats from armed local militias and cartel-backed miners who control the illegal river sectors. Additionally, underwater diving on these unregulated rafts is notoriously lethal due to collapsing underwater mud walls and tangled air hoses. In another episode, the team followed ancient Yukon trails into some of the most extreme geographical environments on Earth. The locations were the Madre de Dios jungle and La Rinconada, a lawless boomtown sitting at 16,700 feet above sea level, making it the highest gold mine on Earth. In the high-altitude mountains, miners were forced to do without machinery entirely. Instead, they would rely on hand-lit dynamite explosives and primitive hand tools to chip gold out of freezing, unventilated hard rock tunnels. Severe altitude sickness threatened to end the jungle expedition early, as the thin air starved their brains of oxygen. The town itself was completely lawless, with no running water, sewage systems, or police presence, meaning the film crew had to travel with heavily armed local security. In the show's second season, the team attempted to recreate a 21st-century gold rush in a hostile jungle climate. This was the deep, unmapped rainforest of Guyana, near the Venezuelan border. During their expedition, they used highly unstable hydraulic misfire systems. It was such an unconventional approach that the locals had to educate them on how to use the water cannons. They would use high-pressure water cannons to blast apart towering mud walls, washing the slurry over makeshift wooden sluice boxes lined with toxic liquid mercury to catch the gold. They also faced safety risks here because of the potential for fatal trench cave-ins during their water-heavy process. It was a gamble because the water cannons completely disrupted the Earth's stability above the miners. In the caves, the crew also had to navigate venomous pit vipers, malaria-carrying mosquitoes, and the constant threat of banditry. In another case, the young master and his crew had to sail and hike through the remote highlands of Oceania. These highlands were rugged volcanic terrain in Papua New Guinea. They also had to do away with much of the technology here and switch to using their hands. The mining process was also unique, as locals had to build temporary dams of river rocks and logs, manually shoveling raw gravel into carved tree trunks to catch gold flakes. The team faced extreme isolation and volatile tribal conflicts. To access the gold ground safely, Klondike's youngest king had to personally negotiate with local tribal elders to secure the film crew's safe passage across dangerous territorial borders. The Dominion Creek owner survived the lawless Amazon, but back on his home turf, a different kind of war was brewing. A literal wall of fire was about to turn his former mentor into his most bitter corporate enemy. Polar opposites facing the same heat. Parker Schnabel and Tony Beets fought for a decade, both before and after Tony's major legal cases. He was Parker's former landlord, and apart from the usual tenant-to-landlord back-and-forths, they had a lot of differences regarding business. Even though they went at it for so long, their most bitter explosive fights over royalty rates and water rights happened after Tony's first major environmental legal case. Tony's case is undoubtedly the most infamous environmental and safety controversy in gold rush history. The incident also resulted in massive public backlash and an attempted corporate cleanup, but this time it involved a multi-year legal battle in the Canadian court system. During Season 5, Tony Beets was filmed supervising a highly controversial stunt on his claim at Indian River. In the shot, a crew member under him poured gasoline directly onto the surface of a large mining pond. Another worker then ignited the fuel, causing a massive, roaring wall of fire to erupt across the water. This action had no superficial reason, but instead, it was a reckless celebration to welcome a newly modified, historic gold dredge to the operation. The footage immediately sparked outrage among environmental groups and local Yukon residents when it aired on international television. The Yukon government's Department of Environment launched a formal investigation after viewing the broadcast, and Tony Beets and his company, Tamarack Inc., were officially charged under the Yukon Waters Act for deliberately allowing a contaminant to enter a water body. The case went to court, and Tony was ultimately convicted and ordered to pay $31,000 in fines, while his subordinate, who poured the gasoline under his supervision, was ordered to pay $1,725. Following the Beets incident, the show's producers faced intense scrutiny. The Discovery Channel had to implement much stricter compliance protocols on all active sets to ensure that stunts did not violate local environmental or safety regulations. The channel and his PR team also tried their best to implement the same retribution strategy used for his tenant, but it just didn't work. And even though both of them had now faced similar problems, it didn't lighten the hatred they had towards each other. Landlord-tenant issues. The feud between Parker Schnabel and Tony Beets is the most legendary conflict in Gold Rush history, evolving from a standard mentor-student dynamic into a bitter multi-million-dollar corporate rivalry. What began as explosive shouting matches over land leases eventually turned into a cold war of legal maneuvering and tactical property blockades in the Yukon. The feud started because Parker did not own his own land when he first arrived in the Klondike as a teenager. He had to lease land from Tony Beets, who owned the lucrative Scribner Creek claims. Tony forced Parker into a brutal contract, demanding a massive 15% royalty on every single ounce of gold the young master mined. As Parker's operation grew incredibly successful, he grew to resent paying Tony millions of dollars for doing zero physical work. Parker felt Tony treated him like a peasant, feeding a greedy king, leading to massive, screaming arguments whenever Tony showed up to demand his gold. The relationship completely fractured during Season 9, culminating in one of the most explosive business breakups on reality TV. Tony attempted to leverage his power by raising Parker's royalty rates even higher for the upcoming season. Instead of bending to Tony's demands, Parker gambled his entire life savings. He walked away from Scribner Creek, bought his own independent ground, and left Tony with an empty, unmined claim and zero royalty income. Once Parker became an independent landowner, the power dynamic flipped, and the feud became a strategic chess match over water licenses. Once, Tony needed to move a massive, historic dredge across land under Parker's control, and he required access to Parker's water lines to run his own operations. Remembering how Tony had squeezed him for years, Parker crudely refused to grant Tony access. He used strict Yukon water regulations as a legal shield, forcing Tony's multi-million-dollar dredge operation to sit idle and costing him massive losses. The rivalry reached its peak when the two operations bordered each other directly. In these moments, arguments would usually erupt over mud mountains. They needed control over these massive piles of dirt and gravel that were sitting right on the boundary line of their respective claims. Both bosses accused the other of stealing pay dirt and encroaching on their territory. In recent seasons, the feud shifted from personal screaming matches to pure corporate competition. Parker's massive $15 million purchase of Dominion Creek officially established him as a bigger landholder and operator than Tony, cementing his status as the undisputed king of the Klondike. Today, while they are no longer screaming at each other daily, they remain fierce rivals who actively compete for the best ground, the best crew members, and the highest gold totals in the Yukon. Parker won the war for the Klondike soil, but the cost of the crown was higher than anyone realized. While his gold holdings reached record highs, his personal life hit a devastating low, a minefield filled with heartbreaks and bombs. Again, the reason for the show's spin-off was to change the narrative around Parker's character. But the thing is, this narrative wasn't exactly false. In some instances, he was exactly as portrayed on the original TV run, and even though he undoubtedly had two sides to him, his personal relationships suffered. He has also talked about how this relentless, hyper-focused work ethic has severely damaged his personal life. He also openly admits that his biggest character flaws are a volatile temper, a lack of empathy, and an inability to separate his business from his personal relationships. His most notable interpersonal conflicts, broken friendships, and family strains trace directly back to these flaws. Even his 2-year relationship with Australian veterinary nurse Ashley Yule couldn't survive this, as it ended in 2018 solely due to Parker's neglect. Parker publicly confessed that he viewed her more as an asset to the Gold Room than a partner, failing to allocate any time or emotional energy to her outside of work. In recent interviews, Parker has expressed a deep sense of personal isolation. He has noted that his reputation as a workaholic who lives in a remote mining camp for 6 months out of the year makes it nearly impossible to maintain a traditional, healthy, romantic relationship. Even his closest friendship on the show took a direct, painful hit from the prodigy's cold lifestyle. Rick Ness started as a close friend whom he personally recruited. However, as the young master's operation expanded, fans watched their friendship erode into a strictly transactional, high-pressure dynamic. Rick frequently expressed feeling unappreciated, noting that his friend rarely offered praise, and instead only focused on mistakes or slow production times. Driven to the point of severe physical and mental burnout, Rick abruptly quit Parker's crew to start his own rival mining operation. While they maintain a professional relationship on television today, the deep, brotherly bond they once shared was permanently broken by the star's inability to step out of boss mode. In addition to these two, the star's relationship with his brother, Parker Schnabel, has been scarred. Early in his career, Parker also fell out with legendary mechanic and operator Gene Cheeseman, causing Gene to ultimately walk away in disgust, leaving Parker stranded mid-season. What do you think of the prodigy's character flaws? And do you think he could have saved his relationship with his landlord if he hadn't acted petty? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.